YouTube. So in a minute, we'll be on YouTube.
Even not to revert to my phone. So
okay. Other phone here, Clara. Phone gone. Let me know on low.
Oh,
phone on low. Yeah. Phone on low. I learned. Okay, if you are with us on YouTube, thank you for joining the broadcast. I will introduce us properly by our guest properly very soon. But I want to just send a link to our suppliers fields. Not all me by it as well. So I want to get a link to Facebook for those who may want to join us on Facebook. So just give me 1 minute. So far, we have been discussing with Pastor Taiye Arimoro. He has been giving us a testimony of his life as a Christian. In a moment, we'll start off. But unfortunately, we had a little break in transmission, and it was good in a sense because that way I was able to get back to my laptop and see if I can get this broadcast live. Okay, so Pastor Taiye Arimoro had been telling us about his life, how he became, where he was born, his family life, background, and all of that, how he became a Christian, and so on and so forth. He also told us about Crown Reformed Assembly. If it happens that this video does not have the information of what he has given us earlier, I'm going to write it as a note under the YouTube subsequently. Okay. Pastor, right now in your testimony, you got to the point where you were telling us about how you went to Europe, how you went to, to Europe, and then how you began to reconsider the whole Pentecostal charismatic theology. So, sir, can you just kind of give us a little background and then continue your story of how you became or you began to reconsider your Pentecostal theology? Please, sir, join us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Brother Deji. I'm sorry for that little break we had in the transmission. Now, I was saying that when we got to the Netherlands, we actually went there to plant another church for Communion Bible Church, but things were not working as we expected. We didn't experience the kind of. Can I continue, please?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're hearing you, sir.
Hello.
We can hear you,
so
sir.
We didn't experience. Okay, we didn't experience the kind of rapid growth and explosion that we had back in Africa. It became tough to do ministry, there in Europe. And, by this time, I think I had deceived myself into believing that I had risen, to a spiritual order, where I believe I can come into any nation, break the ground, offer up some high power, prophetic and deliverance prayers over the nation, and then the church will be filled up. But in this case, it wasn't just working, and it was becoming really frustrating for us. Now, you might not really understand or be able to believe what I'm saying. You identify where I was coming from. By this time, I had become what you call a prophet to the nations. I practically was traveling nations, offering prayers for the deliverance of such nations and for the nations to open up to the gospel.
Okay.
It was frustrating for us that now we are here, in Europe, expecting the place to open up and then church will be filled up. Nothing was really happening. In actual sense, we began to, experience some level of breakthrough actually, when I began to give up, the Pentecostal doctrine.
Really?
That was when I began to see people coming to church. But by this time, I was already struggling with, lots of the doctrines. I was already thinking of giving up preaching. So coupled with this, the challenge of, not having the church kick off as I wanted, I also felt ill, like I was trying to say.
Yes, sir.
And I felt strange sickness. And again, like I said, it was another challenge for me. I mean, it defied my word of faith belief. I believed in divine health. I had boasted before that as a missionary, I was never going to be sick. I terribly down with illness and dying in a foreign country. A champion of faith, trying to be an example of, of a man of faith that many will emulate. And now,
Yes, sir.
seriously,
Here you are.
so it was really very disturbing for me. And I also remember at this time, I reached out to some of my friends, and some of my mentors, big time mentors in the ministry, trusting that they would just send a word and I will be on my feet. After all, I'm representing the kingdom in the Netherlands. So
Yes.
I should be up and doing. But nothing seemed to be working. And the kind of counsel I was receiving from them was really, really confusing and, disturbing to me. So I believe God allowed all this to happen to set me up for what He wants to do, in my life. So to now compound the whole issues, let me also, I also remember that at this time, my wife also lost both of her parents, so it was really troubling for us.
Yes, sir. Sorry, Pastor, 1 minute, sir.
Okay.
Yes, I'm not sure whether because in the earlier interview, you were not using this earphone. So
Okay.
it might be that the earphone is not good enough. Can you remove it and speak into the phone and let's see whether it has a better speaker or...
Okay.
Yes, it appears the earphone is not the picture, the sound is the sound. Sir.
I know.
Okay. Okay, can you speak now? Let's hear you.
Now.
Hello, sir. Can you speak now?
Yes. Well, is it
okay? Incidentally, somehow it's good and then it's bad. So I don't know. Well, listen. Okay, I think we might have to have the earphone back on if you don't mind, sir. Please put on the earphone back. Oh, there. Okay.
Let me put the earphone back.
Okay. Please, I just continue. We will have to deal with.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let me just round this off. My wife lost her parents, and then I had a friend in Africa who began to say and do things to kind of put us into some trouble, a new place. And for me, it was really challenging. I couldn't reconcile how a trusted friend, a brother whom we had shared people together, will want to begin to do something like this. So it made me to begin to doubt the whole, Christian thing. That if a brother as close as this, a minister as close and trusted as this, could do something like this, is this thing real at all? It made me begin to doubt the whole thing. So I think somewhere around 2005,
Yes, sir.
I began to doubt some of my doctrines, the things I was preaching and teaching. And it was gradual initially, but by 2007, I knew
Yes,
that we just couldn't continue, as we were. We couldn't continue with our involvement with the church and with the whole movement. So I tendered, my resignation. I resigned from my pastoral responsibility with the church. I gave the church, and even as at this time, I knew something was wrong with the theology, but I didn't know what else. I didn't know where to go to. There was no church. To all my friends were, in the Word of Faith, Pentecostal movement, my mentors. But people were telling me that I was foolish to have left the ministry. How can you leave certainty for uncertainty? You know,
Certainty, yeah.
so it was that bad. So I had,
Mm,
where to go to than to just end up on the net making researches for myself,
mm,
correction, or seeking for truth. What else can I
mm,
do? Because I left the church, I walked out of the church we had planted in the Netherlands, you
mm.
know, for the first time in my 24 years of Christian life and ministry. I was,
Yes.
I was practically doing nothing. I was
Mm,
practically doing nothing. There was no form of any Christian ministry that, I was doing at the time.
mm, mm,
So there was nothing else to do than to resort to making researches on the net.
mm,
By providence, I came across a website called Deception in the Church.
mm,
Deception in the Church. And, I began to read articles upon articles, articles upon articles that will share light on major issues that I was battling with. And for me, this was really fresh, you know. In fact, I remember those days, going back to those websites, I'll be, a bit apprehensive. I'll be afraid, saying to myself, I don't know what part of, my theology is going to get knocked off today.
yeah, 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 yeah. Sorry, sir. But before you go further, I just
Yes.
realized now that it will be appropriate for me to introduce you probably all over again. Okay, so just give me a few minutes to do that to the audience. Right now, we
Okay.
are on YouTube, and then we're also on Facebook. We don't have power now. Our power just failed, so I don't have access to the what people are saying. Live feedback. But I just thought maybe I should introduce you properly again. Okay, if you're joining this broadcast, or if you get to see it later, I just want to say, well, this is Reformed Niger Television. We try to produce something every Saturday. And today we're speaking with Pastor Taiye Arimoro. He's the pastor of Crown Reformed Assembly. The church is in Akme Ikeja, Ogba area, Akme Road, Ogba area. And the website of the church is Crown Reformed. Sorry, help me out with the website again.
Crownreform.org.
Okay, crownreform.org. Crown as in the crown of a king, reformed.org. Okay, so you can look up the website and learn about him. Pastor Taiye Arimoro today is telling us the story of his life. He's telling us the testimony of his life. Of all the people who may claim to be reformed in this country, he is the only person that I know that has such a staggering testimony of how he became a Christian, how he joined the Pentecostal charismatic movement, and how today he's he's a pastor in a Reformed assembly. So far, he has told us of how he had gone to pastor in Gambia, and then from Gambia, he did have quite a successful ministry in the Gambia. Then he went to Europe with the hope of replicating the same success, but he had a totally different experience. So right now, he's telling us how he had resigned from the church that sent him out as a missionary, and now he's encountering the whole process of that changed his theology and everything. So, sir, please, over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. So, like I was saying, I had no other choice but to resort to making, researches, looking for answers on the net. So this website that by Providence I was led to, that I saw, deception in the church led me to many Bible teachers, many that had not, known, heard, or read about. People like Jacob Prash of Maria Ministry, people like Austin Sparks, people like Art Cass. Now, many of those people, though, are not, renowned Calvinists. They're not known Calvinists, but their approach to scriptures, was totally different from what I was used to. So I would sit down all day at this time, reading their articles, listening to their messages, and it was quite refreshing to me. It was something new. It was something that I had not, experienced or heard or read about. Now, for those men, I began to realize it was not just about ministry, that they had a relationship, they were pushing with the Lord. They wanted to make their lives first better with the Lord before, they worked for God. But prior to this time, my whole life was all about ministry. Everything I did, everything I studied, my prayer life, everything was to make me, a better received person as a minister, not really becoming a better person for Jesus. These were secondary things. The primary thing is the work. You want to be a champion for Jesus. You want to make a name for yourself. So this time, while I was while I was reading and listening to from this man, it became quite interesting to me. Scriptures were treated in context. They were not phrases were not taken out of verses, taken in isolation, and doctrine built out of them. And maybe for the first time, in my Christian experience then, I had teachers taking a whole book. I remember that. I remember that time. I think it was Prash who took the whole of First Timothy, and it was quite interesting to me. So it was this that led to my rethinking about the whole Pentecostal theology, and you know and that's how this website now began to lead me to meeting certain Calvinists. The first that I will meet will be Dr. Piper, you know, and his first book that I ever read was his compilation of his work on desiring God.
Okay.
A touch on so many subjects and so many topics.
That's Dr. John Piper.
Yeah, John Piper. His work on desiring God. It kind of opened my eyes up to quite a lot of where I was at the time. And then I got his book on the supremacy of God in preaching. The supremacy of God. I remember, when I read, John Piper's book on preaching, I said to myself that I was never going again to preach.
Wow.
Going again to preach. And, I also, read a book by, Parker, I think J.I. Parker?
J.I. Packer, yes.
Yeah, Parker. Yeah, it's been a long time now. I read this book, very refreshing, very refreshing. And then I got to meet John MacArthur. I was led to the website,
gty.org. Grace to you website.
Grace to
yes, the
Grace
to you website. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, sir. Thank you so much. Go ahead, sir, please. Go ahead.
This was all early days for me as I began to meet all those people on the net and began to explore more, began to read more and study more until I came to a place where I knew that I had to repent before the Lord, repent of all I had taught and preached before, which I did. And I started trying to reach out to all those I had put that, look, I've missed, and that all that I've been doing and teaching before, the life of what I know now is practically wrong. Yes.
All right, sir. Before we talk about how you came back to Nigeria from Europe, I would like maybe if you can touch on 1, 2, 3 key doctrines that you pushed then that the Lord helped you to realize that these are not right. You know, it's not possible to do an exegete on them with the Bible in this kind of a program, but just maybe just touch on one or two of them, and then we'll look at how you return to Nigeria, sir.
Yeah, well, just looking at my background, where I came from, what I was doing at the time, I believe so much that I had risen, so high in the spiritual order that I could truly speak things into existence. Remember I had said that Cindy Jacobs has spoken into my life. She had personally I met with her, and she had told me that God spoke to her that I've been called to become a prophet to nations. Now, practically means that any nation you stepped, into, you can utter words and expect things to come to pass. So I truly believe, and I truly that doctrine of the word of faith, that says that you can have what you say, But I came to find that it was not so. I got there. I said all I could, ever say. I could do. Nothing was just happening, and I know from scriptures now, you know, we can't put ourselves, into the position of God. We can. It's only God that has that ability to say a word, and it comes
Yes.
to.
Yes. 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 All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for the time. Can you tell us how you returned to Nigeria, possibly the year you returned to Nigeria, and how ministry has been so far?
Yeah, we came back to Nigeria in 2009. In 2009. Now, in 2007, I resigned my pastoral responsibility in the Netherlands. I left the church, and for for close, for about 2 years, I did nothing but just study, searches, and just praying, and, and somehow just decided that I knew then that I had to come back home. You know, I mean, my friends, even my family, were all against our coming back, returning home, knowing the state of things back at home. Everybody
Yes.
was coming to see, what it is you're coming. My children were all established and doing well in school back in the Netherlands, funny enough, the Dutch was the only language they were speaking, so
Really? Wow.
everybody was telling us, how are you going to manage this? You can't come back home. I had led the church, so it wasn't like that's an established church or work that we're coming to meet here. But we just knew that we had to come. I knew that, because at that time the truth was, I didn't know, and I said this to myself that I was thinking that, I was naive, just to say this. I was naive to think that I would be the only person, that would be thinking the way, that I was thinking at the time. That I would be the only person that will literally walk out of the word of faith and embrace, a strange theology, that I
Yeah.
had at that time. So I was thinking nobody here in Nigeria will have, will be thinking,
Reformed persuasions.
will have this reform perspective. Even at that time, I wasn't really calling it, I wasn't really into the reform thing properly,
Okay.
Yeah, but I knew that now I was going towards a gospel center, a Christ
Yes.
centered theology. And I knew that all my friends and mentors were not for it. But I just knew that I had to come back. I had to be part of a corrective ministry. I said to myself, I was part of the problem. I was part of, the rot at home. I had to do whatever I can to bring about, a change. So I said to myself, and by providence also, as I kept searching on the net, I met a brother on the net, brother Yomi Adegoye, who, by the way, was the pioneer pastor of the church
Crown
at
Reform.
Crown Reform. So I met him on the net. By that time, he was running a blog, Yomi Says, that was challenging many of these issues that I was, fighting and struggling with at the time. Who around that time was beginning to have problems. He too was a word of faith minister, but the Lord had begun to challenge and deal with him of the errors and the discrepancies of the word of faith errors. So it was at the time he himself was coming out of that movement that I met him on the net. So a little bit comforted me that if I come home, at least as somebody to fellowship with. Associate with, kind of gave me some comfort and some encouragement to come. So we came back, we came home 2009, and we arrived in Lagos and immediately located Crown, pastored by Pastor Yomi at that time. They were meeting at Unilag, and we started to fellowship with them. So that was coming back home to Nigeria.
Amen. All right. Okay. And I'm also aware that at some point the church leadership changed, and you were appointed to lead the assembly. And you have actually gone from Unilag, you went to an area in K2, and then right now you are in Acme Road in Ogba, Lagos. Thank you so much for this interview. As we bring this interview to a close, we have an audience out there. People are disillusioned. There's this increasing number of young people who are becoming atheists today. And many of it is because of reactions to what is happening in the church, especially the Pentecostal churches. What do you have to say to probably this large audience out there about the gospel and about church life and Christianity so far, sir?
To my friends and particularly ministers who are still in the Word of Faith movement, I will say this because I still have quite a lot of friends in the movement. For many, they do know that a large chunk of the doctrines and the teachings that are being taught in this movement is wrong. They know it's wrong. But the challenge is moving away from it. The challenge is being bold enough to walk away from it. And for me, it was a challenge, really, transiting from being a Pentecostal minister now to being a Reformed minister. Those days, now I'm bivocational. Those days I was full time. I had all the ever worked on solid for the king. I had all the money. So I know that it is a challenge for many today, saying to themselves, how am I going to survive? I have friends today who tell me that, look, Taiye, I know what you are saying. I realize some of your teaching is wrong, but what do you want me to do? All my life, I have done this. Where do I go from there? And what I tell them is, is it not rather we die being paupers? Is it not better we die poor than having the whole world and losing our soul? Well, Jesus, what will you gain if you have the whole world at your feet and then you lose your soul? What will you gain? What will you gain? And this is what I tell my brethren. What will you gain? As long as you have life, you have strength, God has still given you your brain. There are still things that you can do. And this nation is such a blessed nation. When I came back to the country, I was already in my 40s, late 40s, and I thought to myself, what was I going to do? It was
Now I'm ready to eat now.
It was practically impossible for me at that time to go dust my certificate, start looking for job. And I was saying to myself, Lord, what am I going to do? I can't go back to raising money the way I used to do. I can't go back taking, invitations and, receiving honorariums just anywhere like I used to before. So I had to do something. I had to do something. And I thank God for what we're doing today, that I was able to, I'm able to support my family, and still do ministry. So I encourage my friends, who are still out there, who are still struggling with the decision whether to stay or to remain because of the fear of how to survive and how to, because I tell you, brother, the greatest obstacle to many people today, who are still struggling with this doctrinal issue, this Pentecostal, doctrinal error. It's not even the fear of the persecution they will receive from their fellow, Pentecostal ministers or church members. It's the fear of how they will survive. The fear of how they will survive. My generation, we grew up doing nothing but ministry. Unfortunately, many of my generation lost their youth. Instead of pursuing our careers, we spent our youthful, strength on ministry. Pursuing, building people's glory. In the name of building a kingdom for God. Now, many of us are coming to the realization that we had missed it, and for many, they are thinking that maybe it's too late for me now. How will I survive? So my encouragement for them is to trust the Lord.
Yes.
Trust the Lord.
You pointed out something when you said, excuse me, please.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Yes, I have to pause. I tell my son to leave the room. He will start making noise here. So the biggest challenge is the doctrine. When the doctrine is wrong, then you're not going to have a Christian life. And when you don't have a Christian life, then you're going to have susceptibility to sin and all of that. We hear of many scandals out there. There's this issue of Pastor Suleiman. I can imagine that relationship between Pastor Suleiman and Pastor Davis, like the kind of relationship you had with your own bishop, that kind of a thing. Although, of course, thankfully, there was no issues, no scandals like that. But when the doctrine is wrong, then you're going to have an openness to sin and so on and so forth. But what you are trying to tell us is this: you were able to take that step of faith and step out of this movement, and God has been very kind to you. In one hand, you are still serving the Lord Jesus Christ in ministry, and then in the other hand, you're able to work, make money, provide for your family, and even give back to the ministry. I have been involved in your life and ministry before, and I've seen how much you have blessed me, blessed people around, and even been a blessing to the church. So, like you are saying, I also believe that one is able to pull out of this movement, embrace the gospel of Christ, preach what is true, have it imbibed in our hearts, and so on. You want to add something to that, son?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you just said. Now, let me say that it's almost practically impossible. And I know those who are still in the Pentecostal movement, those who are, a little bit high up in that movement can attest to what I'm saying. And you just mentioned, Pastor Suleiman and some other scandals we have. unfortunately in the church today. Now, let me say this. It's almost impossible to live the life, as we call it there, to live the doctrine, to enjoy the success, the clout, the fame, the power that, this doctrine affords you and not miss it in life. It's almost impossible. It's almost impossible. And, may I also say this, that, well, it's unfortunate that, these standards have become, household names today in Nigeria. But maybe I will shock you to say this, that, the ones we have not heard about are even more out there.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, when a man gets to a level where you almost see yourself as an institution, you are the law, you come close to any form of accountability at all.
Yes.
It's the most dangerous place to be. When your word is becoming a law, you become a gospel yourself. And that is the state at which, unfortunately, some people have gotten to, and so it becomes easy. And that is the time, that is the place where people get into, they fall into error, make, all kinds of heretic statements. And I just want to thank God, really. I thank God. At the time, talk was going on and there were arrangements to install me a bishop. That was the time I began to have my own challenges about the whole movement, and I pulled out. But even before then, I had relationship with people. I mean, there are, this is a public whatever, but there are friends I have who are still in the movement today. Who are out that there were things that they did that we did. Like it's let me just say it this way: it's almost impossible for you not to have a right doctrine. If you don't have a right doctrine, you can't have a right life. You can't live this way. It's almost impossible to live by the doctrines, the dictates of what obtains and the word of faith movement and not mess up. It's almost impossible.
Thank you so much, sir. So far, for those of you who are watching, hopefully we have a number of people watching. I've not been able to track that. But for those of you who are watching, we're speaking with Pastor Taiye Arimoro of the Crown Reformed Assembly, Acme Road, Ogba, Lagos. Crown Reformed Assembly have their website, crownreformed.org. You can go there and see their work. If you are not committed to a church or you want a sound church, a church where the word of God is preached, I would happily request that you go to that website. You'll be able to get their contact there, and they will be able to get you over to join the church. That is what we do here. We talk about the gospel, and we try to encourage people to join living churches. Okay. The very last question, sir. So, sir, now that, we have discussed personal between myself and you, we have discussed about this testimony, and you have shared your desire to put in a book. What are the plans? I want to make this a public challenge to you. What are your plans and thoughts that you might have towards putting your testimony into a book? Because a short interview like this, you are not going to touch on everything. There are some details you left out, which you probably would want to put in a written form. Are you still working on that? If not, let me challenge you or encourage you, sir, to please do it for the sake of the coming generation and for those who are still in that system.
I want to thank you, Brother Deji. I also want to thank you for the encouragement that you have been to me. You are part of that community of friends in Nigeria that embraced and accepted me into, the Reformed family after I returned here. I must say to you that one of the great challenge and one of the great regrets that I live with every day right now is, the many people had impacted the many lives that I have touched that are still there, pushing this wrong doctrines. I have so many people who are pastors today, in and outside of this country, that directly or indirectly, were as a result of my ministry as a Pentecostal ministry. So one of the commitment I've made to myself and to God is that as much as I can, I want to reach all these people. Some, I've been in touch with them, some I've written them, some we're talking, some have blocked me on their line, some even don't want to have with me anymore, but like you said, we're trying to work, on a book to try and put, this testimony in written form, and hopefully we trust that it will be a blessing to the church, particularly for many who are, who are struggling, with transiting from being, a Pentecostal minister, into a gospel-centered
Yes.
pastor or preacher. So we're working on the book, and by the grace of God, it is going to play a very important role in this, and it will come out when when it's all put together. Because I'm just trying, it will be a source of blessing for the body of Christ.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Pastor Arimoro. We'll just bring this to a close now. But probably, let me just say that maybe you give us a parting word to our audience out there, unbelievers watching, people in the Word of Faith movement watching, true believers watching. What a closing statement, sir?
Yeah, I thank you very much for this opportunity to share my testimony. My word to all is that the truth is still available. The truth has been given to us, has not changed. Is a truth that was given to us by the Lord Himself, established by the apostles. And I encourage all, my friends, those who are still seeking the truth. Today we have, fortunately, we have good churches, in Lagos, in Ibadan, for truth seekers, where we can go, where we can hear the truth of God's word being preached. We have the Solving Grace in Lagos, we have Crown Reform Assembly. These are churches that I would recommend that we go and trust in the Lord, that the Lord Himself will speak to our hearts and bring us out of every form of error and heresy.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Pastor Arimoro, for joining us. Please extend my hearty greetings to Mommy, your wife, and the children also. Thank you, my audience, for joining this discussion. Unfortunately, there's a part of the discussion that was cut out, but I'm going to try to put it up on YouTube subsequently. You can get to watch it. Thank you, sir. I will contact you immediately after I end this broadcast to say my gratitude. Thank you, sir.